Welcome to the BrainTap Podcast, here to help you relax, reboot, and strengthen your overworked brain. Your host, Dr. Patrick Porter, is the developer of the BrainTap Pro mobile app, designed to help you sleep better, lose weight, de-stress, or kick a bad habit, all while increasing energy, focus, peak performance, and more. Take the free BrainTap Pro Challenge. Simply register at braintap.pro. That's braintap.pro. On the BrainTap Podcast, Dr. Porter brings together a team of experts to share up-to-the-minute news in neuroscience, brain training technology, along with how mindfulness and meditation can be used to improve your life in ways you never imagined possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Patrick Porter.
Hello, this is Dr. Patrick Porter, and welcome back to BrainTap Radio. Have you ever thought about how your emotions influence your health? Our guest today, Dr. Bradley Nelson, Dr. Brad, is one of the foremost experts in the emerging field of bioenergetic medicine and energy psychology. Through his 20-plus years as a holistic physician, he developed the Emotion Code, a system for releasing the trapped emotions that block mental and physical healing. We're going to give you an opportunity to learn more at emotioncodegift.com. Don't worry, we're going to put that into the text of the podcast so you can go back and get that. And I'm going to encourage you all to do just what I did. When I found this out, I went onto that website. I immediately got that free gift that Dr. Brad's willing to give us. So it's great. So I want to welcome Dr. Brad. And why do you say emotions are the underlying cause of most physical and psychological diseases?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here. During all those years that I was in practice, I practiced for 17 years as a holistic chiropractic physician, and then another 2 years in a remote or a distance practice. And I was really just, during all those years, I was kind of obsessed really with getting to the roots of what was really wrong with my patients. I wanted to know, because I wanted to fix them in the shortest possible time, and I wanted to really get to the root of the underlying roots of their symptoms, whatever those symptoms might be. And I saw people of all ages with all kinds of problems, mental, physical, emotional, etc. And what I found was the single biggest common denominator for all of them was their emotional baggage. Now, when we use that phrase, emotional baggage, we usually are using it to refer to somebody else. Right. Mm-hmm. Oh, that guy, he's got a lot of emotional baggage. What we now know, though, is that we all have emotional baggage, and we now know what that baggage actually consists of. So basically, if you look at your hand looks pretty solid, right? Mm-hmm. If you were to magnify your hand 100 million times, you'd be looking face to face with a single individual atom. And if you were to look inside that atom, you'd see there's really nothing in there, just empty space and some infinitesimally tiny energies zipping around at the speed of light. And that's really what we are. We're all beings of energy. And even though that might be a little bit abstract for us, it really is ultimately true. And so when we're feeling an intense emotion of anger or resentment or depression or grief or sadness or whatever it might be, on a quantum level, what's happening? Well, on a quantum level, what's going on when you're feeling an intense emotion is that your body now, your energy, the energy of your body is now vibrating at a slightly different frequency. Every emotion has its own frequency, its own vibration. And so apparently what happens is when an emotion is too big and too powerful, the energy of that emotion can become trapped in the body, so that when that event is over, when the bully moves away or the divorce is finalized or the funeral is over, whatever happens, you are still carrying emotional baggage in the form of what we call trapped emotions. And a trapped emotion is a little ball of energy about the size of a baseball, about the size of a cantaloupe. And these can lodge anywhere in the body, and they can affect the body in all kinds of different ways depending on where that emotion lodges. So for example, if a trapped emotion lodges in the area of the liver, it's going to interfere with the liver's function. All the chemical reactions now taking place within the liver are going to be a little bit altered. The blood flow may be a little altered, the lymph flow a little altered. the flow of meridian energy, chi energy through those areas will be a little bit altered. And so you might end up manifesting imbalances or symptoms from the imbalance that's now going on from that emotional energy that is stuck in that area. If you have a trapped emotion, for example, that lodges in the throat, it might imbalance the throat chakra. It might imbalance the thyroid itself. And of course, I've seen this kind of thing many, many times. We have almost 4,000 practitioners now in 70 countries around the world who are doing this work. And we're all finding the same things, that this emotional baggage that lodges in the body, wherever it lands, it affects us relative to where it is in the body. And so, for example, if you have a trapped emotion and that energy lodges in the head, it can affect and interfere with the proper functioning of the central nervous system, the brain. Trapped emotions that lodge in the neck might affect the spinal cord. They might end up manifesting as headaches and other things. And as a chiropractor for almost 30 years, what I found was that the misalignments that occur in the body, the misaligned bones in the neck and the skull and all over the body, are usually the result of some emotional baggage that's gotten trapped in the body. But there's another effect that they have on us as well. And that's really the mental emotional effect. To illustrate this, I had a man that came into me many years ago who was suffering from really severe low back pain. It was a 9 on a 0 to 10 scale, been going on for a while. I tested him and found he had a trapped emotion. The emotion was anger. And I released that trapped emotion, that ball of emotional energy. And the pain level went from a 9 to a 0 just instantly. And he couldn't believe it. He was thrilled. I was grateful that it worked so well. He left the office a few minutes later feeling totally fine, no pain at all. But the interesting thing about it is, a couple days later, he came back into me and he said, you know, Doc, he said, when I came in here, he said, my back is fine. He said, I still can't quite believe it. But he said, when I came in here, I had another problem I did not tell you about. He said, for as long as I can remember, I've basically been a rageaholic. He said, I've been to anger management several times. He said, it hasn't really helped me. He said, I got to watch the road rage. He said, I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids. He said, it's just who I am. Or so I thought. He said, since you released that emotion of anger for me, I don't feel it anymore. I just feel kind of relaxed. He said, how does that work? And I said, at the time, I said, I really don't know. But here's what we think happens. When you have a trapped emotion, in his case, for example, think about this. He has this ball of anger, literally a ball of emotional energy, a ball of anger, causing his low back pain. Because when you have a trapped emotion in the body, what it does is it literally distorts the normal energy field of the body. And so ultimately you're going to have symptoms, and the most common one of those is pain. But the other thing that was happening is, when a situation would arise in his life where he might tend to feel angry, he would slide right into that resonance, right into that emotional vibration much more easily, much more readily than he otherwise would have. Why? Because literally part of his body was feeling that emotion of anger 24/7. See, for 20 years he had this. And so when we release an emotion like this, we never know what the ultimate effects are going to be. But I've seen the release of one trapped emotion change people's lives. We all have emotional baggage. And so that's kind of a nutshell. Every trapped emotion is like a dual-edged sword, because they have a physical effect, but then they also have this mental, emotional effect. And getting rid of these has helped people to get over things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and self-sabotage of all kinds, as well as all kinds of physical problems. I mean, when I was in practice, it was astounding to me how every problem that I saw, every disease process that I saw during all those years had emotional baggage as an underlying cause. And sometimes I felt like a cop who gets called on a bank robbery. And every time I get called on a bank robbery, I see the same white van sitting across the street. I'm starting to get suspicious, right? So anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah. So when you designed this program, I mean, you've designed something that 4,000 practitioners are using. You've written a book about it. People can actually go there and get their own little workbook to start working on themselves. Tell me a little bit about, because we work a lot with people who have like PTSD. You were talking about, we're just ending up a study with that. Also, we have a lot of people with traumatic brain injuries. So how might they use the emotional code in those areas? And what have you seen? I mean, you've already mentioned them before I asked the question, but how have you seen that resolve?
Well, as far as things like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD, what we believe from what we are seeing is that the primary underlying cause of the symptoms from these disorders is emotional baggage. When that emotional baggage is released using the emotion code, the symptoms seem to completely disappear or almost completely disappear in just about everybody. Now, that's not to say that that traditional therapies don't have a place. They obviously do, and cognitive therapies and so on. Those can be fantastic, but those therapies don't release this invisible energetic baggage that people have. And I can't tell you how many times I have worked on someone who, when we find some big piece of emotional luggage in their body, they say, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. I thought I dealt with all that. I spent 5 years in therapy or whatever for that." And see, the therapy helps us to deal with it on a mental level. And that's wonderful. And much of the time that's very needed. But that kind of therapy won't release that energetic invisible baggage, you see. And so that's one of the beautiful things about this, is that it's really, really simple. In fact, let me share a story with you. I think you'll like this one. This was a woman told me this story. She said that she went to emotioncodegift.com and got the Emotion Code book and the book on audio, which is available for your listeners as well as a free gift. And she started reading the book and listening to it. And her son started reading it and listening to it as well. And he started practicing with his friends, and she didn't pay too much attention. But a couple of weeks later, the phone rang. And the woman on the other end of the phone line identified herself as the mother of one of this woman's son's friends. And she said, "Listen," she said, "your son's been doing this emotion thing with the other boys." And she said, "I haven't paid much attention, thought it was cute. But she said, I have to tell you something." She said, "My son has had a severe phobia of water." And of course, you have a phobia to anything. His was to water. She said, "It's really affected our life as a family, and it's affected his life a lot." And she said, "We have tried everything to fix this. We've taken him to everybody. We've tried all kinds of treatments." She said, "Nothing has touched this." She said, "Right now, I'm at the community pool." She said, "My son is out playing in the water with the other boys for the first time in his life." She said, "I can't believe this is even happening." She said, "Your son did this to him. How is this even possible? What in the world is he doing?" And those boys are only 11 years old. See, so that gives you a little insight into how easy this can be, that kids can actually do it and get amazing results.
That's great. So you don't need a PhD to go ahead and get this done, which is great. And people are taking back their power now. I mean, this is a day and age. I mean, my dad used to teach a course called the Silva Method. And of course, back then we were like the outsiders back in the early 80s and 70s. Sure. And people thought, well, you guys are weird. Now people are doing more advanced than that. Of course, that was an early program. But when they're learning the emotional code, how fast, I mean, tell me a little bit about, once somebody downloads this gift, they start using the emotional code, or they go to one of these 4,000 practitioners, how quickly does this happen? Do they, I mean, I know people that they sign up for therapy. I actually, a friend of mine back in the early days when I just graduated, we were trained to make sure people stayed in therapy for a minimum of 2 years. So it was like a life sentence. If they came to see you, sure, you were telling them, and really we were just what you're saying. And a lot of the listeners know this about me, that talk therapy is good for the person doing it for the brief moment, but then it just basically re-energizes that pattern that you're talking about. So we have to find a way to release that pattern. So tell me, how quickly can somebody with using the emotional code start to feel or sense or get this energetic release?
Well, it really depends. It depends on the person, and it depends on what's going on, depends on how much baggage they have. Myself personally, I have seen suicidally depressed people turn around literally within 2 or 3 days. Now, one of the things I need to tell you about, though, that is really the most important part of the emotion code, and that has to do with the heart. Ancient peoples believed the heart to be the seat of the soul and the source of love and creativity and romance and so on. And in the West, we've never paid much attention to that. But what we're finding out now is that the heart is the most powerful organ in the body, puts out a magnetic field 12 feet in diameter. And they've done studies where they found that if one person's feeling love or affection for another person, their heartbeat will manifest and be measurable in the brain waves of that other person. And so there's this whole communication going on. We believe now the heart is really a second brain. It's much, much more than just a pump. And so what we discovered, what was really shown to me, it was a really interesting thing how this came about, which I won't go into detail, but what we found is that when somebody feels like their heart is going to break, when someone's really hurting you, or you're feeling really deeply grieved or abused or whatever, it's a physical sensation. Most people have felt at one point or another. And you feel like an elephant sitting on your chest, or like you're choking, like you can't breathe, and so on. When that's happening, the subconscious mind will move some of that emotional baggage, some of those energies that you have. They will move those and create a wall, literally a wall of energy around the heart. And the most serious cases, actually, let me rephrase that. Every case of major depression, I have found a heart wall. And that's what we're finding all over the world. Every case of PTSD so far has this wall. Now, 93% of people have this wall anyway, but what this does, you see, the subconscious mind is on its own program. It is not limited like our conscious minds are. It does whatever it thinks is necessary. And if you're in some kind of a situation where that delicate core of your being is being injured and hurt, the subconscious mind will build a wall around that. And it's a wall of energy. To us, we can't see it. It exists on an energy level, kind of like trapped emotions or like electricity. We can't see it. But to the subconscious mind, this is very, very real. And let me give you one example. And there are many, but I'll give you one. There was a child that was brought in to see me years ago when I was in practice. And his mother didn't know what to do with him. He had been, it started off that he wouldn't do his homework. And if he did do it, he wouldn't hand it in. And then she'd come into his room at night and he'd be on the floor. She said, "What are you doing on the floor?" And he'd say, "I don't deserve to be in a bed." And she didn't know what was wrong. He was never really happy anymore. He had kind of a pasted on grimace, sort of a smile, really, which is what kids do sometimes when they're really depressed. She paid a surprise visit to his school one day, only to find his teacher berating him for how pathetic he was. She was super frustrated. So his mom took him out of school, tried to do homeschool. That didn't work. She took him to see a psychiatrist, psychologist. He was ultimately told that he was clinically depressed, but there was nothing that could be done to help him because he wouldn't admit that he was depressed, I guess. And that's what she was told. Anyway, so she brought him in to see me. We found that he had a heart wall, this phenomenon. He had 3 layers of emotional baggage surrounding his heart. Each one of these layers was a trapped emotion from a different event that had happened. One of the events was where a couple of his cousins were killed in a car accident. And there was some grief or sadness about that. And then another emotion was where another cousin was killed on a hayride. He fell off the hayride and was run over by the tractor and killed. Terrible accident. Another cousin. And then the first one, the last layer that we got to, which was the layer that created this, what happened was he was with his family at a family reunion. He was there with his best friend, his little cousin, little boy, 5 years old, his best friend. And his sister, who was 12, was the designated babysitter. She was trying to teach their little cousin how to swim, and he drowned. And the overwhelming guilt that his sister was feeling for having such a horrific thing happen on her watch was so overwhelming to him that emotional energy got trapped in his body and it formed into this wall. Well, we cleared those 3 emotions. Probably took a half an hour. And she took him home. And for the next couple of days, he was lying around kind of lethargic. And she was thinking, well, it doesn't look like that really helped. But on the morning of the 3rd day after we worked on him, he got up, got himself ready to go to school, came downstairs, and he said, Mom, I can go back to school now. I'm a happy pappy. That was a direct quote. And so he went back to school and he went into the program for advanced kids because he was so smart, and all of his learning disabilities and everything else were all gone, and his joy came back. And his mother told me that if she hadn't been open to trying something so different, that she didn't think he would have survived. He's 28 years old now and has 2 kids. So that was many years ago, but that gives you an idea of there's a whole nother dimension you see that is happening with these bodies of ours that we've not been aware of. The heart really is the core of our being, and that heart will often put up a wall to protect itself. And when that wall is taken down, and by the way, this is all explained in the emotion code, how to do this. When that wall is taken down, people often fall in love who never ever thought they would, even at advanced ages. People have creative ideas that start flowing like crazy because your best creative ideas are not up here, they're in here, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, I wanted to make sure that your listeners heard about this, about the heart wall, because it's the most important part really of the emotion code.
That's great. It would be interesting. We have a technology that we brought in from Russia. It's advanced heart rate variability. And we can actually take pictures of the nervous system pre and post, and we can actually see the spine through the heart. The heart, we're full believers here at BrainTap about what you're saying about the heart. We just didn't know about the emotional part, which you're sharing today, which is very unique and an awesome perspective. And it'd be interesting to see, because we know the heart is the gold standard for health. And if your heart isn't operating correctly and communicating with the brain, so I think that's an incredible piece. And it would be interesting now that I've maybe do some experimenting with that, with the emotion code. And I'm a firm believer that everybody out there needs to do something about their emotions. You know, we need to, because we've never been trained. We're trained what to think, not how to think. And so these emotions run rapid and we don't know how to, and most of them, in my experience, because I used to unfortunately deal with suicidal teens and pregnant teens, and they didn't even know what they were. They happened when they were children, or maybe up to the time 7, 8 years old, and there's no discernment there to the body. It's just holding on to that emotion. So can you tell us a little bit about how do you have to know what the event was? I mean, you seem to be very specific about all these things. So describe what happens if the person just has this general overall feeling, but they don't know what it is.
Well, this is one of the beautiful aspects of the emotion code, is that we don't rely on people's conscious minds. The conscious mind is highly unreliable. I mean, if you think about when's the last time you got in trouble for something you forgot? Mm-hmm. I mean, probably this week, right? So the conscious mind is very unreliable. However, the subconscious mind is this incredible holographic archiving computer. We believe it logs every moment of your life, every face you've ever seen in a crowd, everything you've ever eaten, tasted, touched, smelled, the whole history of your health or disease is all in there. So what we do with the emotion code is we teach you how to tap into the subconscious mind. It's the ultimate authority. And let me give you an example of how this can work. I was at a workshop once, and there was a young woman who came up out of the audience to be tested. Now, with the emotion code, what we do is we teach you different methods of testing the body. It's a real easy, inexpensive form of, it's free, it's a form of biofeedback. So people will hold out their arm. It's kinesiological testing. And we'll ask questions. And if the arm is strong on resistance, that's a yes. And if the arm is weak, that's a no. Now, we also teach you different methods of testing yourself, okay? And so you can get answers on your own body from your own subconscious. So anyway, this woman comes up. She's probably 22 or something. And I start asking questions. She has got her arm out. I'm asking if she has a trapped emotion that we can release. And the answer is yes. And so we go back, we figure out when it occurred. And it goes back, goes back to earlier than 5 years old. It goes back to sometime during the first year of her life. And I asked her, I said, well, do you have any idea what this might be? The emotion, by the way, that we found was forlorn, which is kind of all alone, feeling hopeless, lonely, desolate, and all rolled into one. And I said, do you have any idea what this might be about? And of course, she had no idea. At the beginning of this event, I had happened to meet this young woman and her mother. So at that moment, I looked out at the audience, and there was her mother, and she was as white as a sheet, and she had her hands up like this. And I said, well, do you have any idea what this might have been about? And she was very embarrassed, but she said she thought she did. She said that during those years, she used to use cloth diapers. And one day she accidentally pinned her daughter to her diaper. And she didn't know about it until she changed her the next time. And so I asked this young woman, really talking to her subconscious mind, is that what this is about? And the answer came back very, very strong. So I released that emotion that had been in there all of her life. And she went back and sat down, and I kind of forgot about it. About 10 days later, I got an email from this woman's mother. And she said, listen, she said, I didn't tell you, my daughter didn't tell you that she has had a problem since about age 8 or 9. She's had this problem with her hip and her knee. And it's been gradually getting worse, and it's been affecting the way she walks a little bit. And we've taken her to different people, but nobody's been able to fix this thing. But she said the moment you release that trapped emotion of forlorn from her, from age 1, that pain in her knee and in her hip has been totally gone. And she said, not only that, she's walking totally normally, but also she feels this new lightness of being that she's never felt before. And she's telling everybody about this. So you see, here's a perfect example of how using the emotion code and asking the subconscious mind, we can find things that are completely off of the conscious mind's radar.
This is fascinating, and we're just about out of time, unfortunately, but they can go to your website, right? Mm-hmm. emotioncodegift.com, which we're going to put in the, and they can find out more. But of everything you've told me, which you've shared a lot of information here today, what would you like our listeners to know that you haven't said so far? Is there anything that you've missed out on that you want to make sure that they know about your processes?
Well, first of all, that it's free. Go to Emotion Code Gift. You get the book as a PDF and the book is an audio, 10 audio MP3 files, so you can listen to it. It's an app also on your phone. So I'll show you what that looks like here really quickly. Let's see here. Okay, here's my phone, and it's this little app right here. And so it works on Android phones and tablets. You got the whole entire book there, and the book on audio, and the chart of emotions as well. And these are interactive, so you can click these, and then if you're not sure what one is, it brings you the definition. So the app is $1.99 on Google Play and on the iTunes Store. And I would just say, if you're listening to this and you're at all open to the possibility that maybe there's another dimension to our lives and to our beings, you've really got to take a look at this and try it, because it really does work, and it's so simple and so fast. And oftentimes people say to me, this just seems too easy. This just seems too simple. And my response is always, well, I can make it more difficult for you if you'd like, but it doesn't have to be hard. It actually really is simple.
Right. There's a saying, spirit is simple, but man is complex. So I think that they need to understand that. So, the magic happens because the technique is there and it works. So I really enjoyed our conversation here. We're going to help get this out to the world in our own way in the BrainTap universe here. And hopefully it brings you some people, and love to, next time we're at the same event, of course, I'm going to come over and say hello to you and see what's happening now. But this is fascinating work. We want to help get it out to the world and help people get those trapped emotions freed up and start living the life they were destined to live instead of holding on to these things. So thank you again for being on the call.
Well, thank you so much. And God bless. Have a great day.
Thank you.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.